The wind on the high Wyoming plains did not whistle. It screamed. It raced over the frozen ground like a living thing, sharp enough to cut skin and fierce enough to bury a grown man in minutes. Winter in the 1880s was not a season. It was a judgment. Wes Carver pushed through the storm with a mule loaded with 2 deer. Snow clung to his coat, to the scar that ran from his eye to his jaw, and to the heavy boots that carried him through the blinding white. He was built for this country, tall, wide-shouldered, silent, and feared by most men who crossed his path. He lived alone for a reason. That was when he saw it, a broken wagon half sunk into the frozen mud. At first he planned to pass it. Strangers meant trouble. Trouble meant the past could find him. And the past was the one thing Wes wanted buried deeper than the winter roads. But then he saw a flash of color under the wagon axle. A woman, barefoot, barely breathing. She looked like a scrap of cloth thrown by the wind. Her skin was blue with cold, her dress torn to shreds, her red hair matted with dirt and sweat. Bruises darkened her jaw. Her feet were cut open from running on rock and ice. She did not move when he crouched beside her. Any smart man would have walked away. Wes was not a smart man in that moment. He lifted her in his arms, shocked at how light she was, and laid her across the mule, tying her down so she wouldn't fall. He didn't look back as he pushed toward the trees. The cliffs hid a small cabin he had built with his own hands, tucked deep in a fold of the mountain where no rider had any reason to pass. Inside, he placed her on his own cot. The fire snapped to life under his rough hands, and the room warmed. He boiled water, cleaned her wounds, and cut away her frozen dress with the same knife he used on deer hides. Slowly, carefully, never touching more skin than he had to. Bruises covered her ribs, old ones, new ones, and at her shoulder, a small brand shaped like a miner's pick. He had seen brands on cattle, never on a woman. He wrapped her in one of his wool shirts and covered her with a heavy bearskin. Then he sat in the corner chair, sharpening his knife, watching her breathe. It was the only sound besides the wind. Hours later, she woke with a gasp. Her eyes flew open, wild with terror. She sat up so fast the bearskin fell away. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice dry as dust. "My cabin," Wes said. "You're safe from the storm." She didn't believe him. Fear pulsed through her body, while she pulled the wool shirt tight around her chest. "Don't touch me," she said. "I won't," Wes replied. He set a cup of hot broth on the floor halfway between them, nudged it toward her with his boot, then sat back down. He didn't watch her drink. He didn't move closer. He simply waited. And that confused her more than anything. For days, the cabin stayed quiet. She ate what he gave her. He changed her bandages once. He spoke only when asked. Yes. No. Rest. His silence felt like a wall she could not climb. When the fever faded and she could walk again, the cabin began to feel too small. She watched him mend traps, clean his rifle, and carve thin wooden shapes with surprising skill. There was gentleness hidden in those big, scarred hands, which made him even harder to understand. She needed answers. One night, while he worked on a snowshoe, she asked, "Why did you bring me here?" He didn't look up. "You would have died." "Men don't help for nothing," she snapped. "Are you waiting for payment? Is that it?" He finally met her eyes. The firelight caught the silver scar on his cheek. "I don't want anything from you," he said. She stood, pacing the room, anger rising, because she did not know what to do with a man who didn't grab her, threaten her, or demand anything. "What are you hiding from? Why live out here like a badger in a hole?" she pressed. He stood, and the cabin shrank under his size. "You should rest," he said. "I'm tired of resting. I want the truth." His jaw tightened. Then he grabbed his coat. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To check the goats." "It's the middle of the night." He paused at the door. "And I know my strength," he said quietly, "and I won't lose control around someone who's been hurt enough." Her breath caught. He stepped into the storm and vanished into the dark. The moment he left, the cabin felt colder than the wind outside. That night changed everything. She couldn't sleep. She walked the cabin restlessly until she found a small leather journal under the pelts. She knew she shouldn't open it, but she did. Inside were charcoal drawings, hawks, pine trees, goats, the mountain ridge, and soft written lines about silence, snow, and the world he tried to keep out. This was a man who felt deeply, a man trying not to break again. When the door opened and he saw her holding the book, she froze. She expected rage. Instead, something like sorrow crossed his face. He said nothing. He simply took the journal from her trembling hands, placed it back in its crate, and returned to the fire. A new silence grew between them. Not distant, not angry. Fragile. Human. Outside, the snow piled high against the cabin walls. Inside, two broken lives sat across the same fire, warming slowly, painfully, toward something neither of them knew how to name. The blizzard did not let up. Snow buried the cabin until the window became a pale square of white. For days, June and Wes lived in a world no larger than 4 log walls and one steady fire. Every sound outside was swallowed by the storm. Every sound inside seemed louder, sharper, more alive. June tried to stay busy. She swept the dirt floor. She mended blankets with neat, careful stitches. She cleaned the table until the wood grain showed like new. Slowly, almost without knowing it, she began to shape the cabin into a home. Wes noticed everything. He never said a word. But his silence had changed. It was no longer a shield. It was something gentler, something that held room for her. One morning, he handed her a pair of wool mittens. "You'll help with the wood today," he said. She hesitated. "I don't know how." "That's why you'll learn." Outside, the cold bit at her face. Wes set a small axe in her hands. "Let the weight do the work," he said. She swung and missed, swung again and barely scratched the log. Heat rushed to her cheeks in frustration. She felt small, weak. "Try again," he said quietly. She hit the log off center, but it split clean in two. Her breath caught. It was the first thing she had done for herself in a long, long time. Life in the cabin shifted. Not fast, or not all at once, but gently, like thawing ice. Wes taught her how to set snares. She learned to walk on snowshoes without slipping. She fetched water from the stream and returned with flushed cheeks and a spark in her eyes that had not been there before. And in return, she brought warmth into the cold quiet of his life. She swept. She cooked. She mended. She hummed sometimes without realizing it. 2 broken lives slowly began to fit together, but the past never sleeps for long. One morning, Wes returned from checking the ridge with a look she had never seen before. Sharp, tense, hunted. "What is it?" June asked. "A rider," he said. "Someone watched the cabin." Her stomach dropped. "Ricard? I don't know, but someone was here." The fragile peace they had built cracked. That night, she woke to find Wes sitting in the chair by the fire, awake, silent, and gripping his knife. His thumb rested on the hilt. He wasn't sleeping. He was waiting. It terrified her. The next morning she demanded, "Who are you waiting for? Am I your prisoner? Did you save me just to guard me?" He set the knife down slowly. "I found tracks," he said. "A single rider. Someone from my past. Someone who shouldn't know where I live." Her breath tightened. Her heart raced. "You're on the run," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "And now you're tangled in it." Silence fell heavy as snowfall. Then she spoke again, her voice trembling. "My name isn't Clara." He looked up. "It's June," she said. "June Abernathy." And the truth poured out of her. How her father sold her to pay his debts. How Rickard turned her into property. How she danced in a saloon tent full of sawdust and fists. How she learned to smile when touched and not scream. How she ran barefoot into the mountains because dying in the snow seemed cleaner than living one more day owned. Her voice broke. Tears ran down her cheeks. Wes did not touch her. He knelt beside her, bringing his huge frame down to her level, and said in a voice rough with something she had never heard from him, "I see you, June. Not Clara, not property, not shame. Just June." For the first time, and she let herself cry without looking away. That night the storm came heavy again, locking them in with their secrets laid bare. But something else grew between them. Something warm. Something dangerous. On the third night of the blizzard, June found the flask of whiskey Wes kept for freezing nights. "I want some," she said. "It's strong," he warned. "I'm not a lady," she said. "Not anymore." She drank. The burn melted something inside her that had been frozen for years. The room softened. Her fear loosened. And she saw him. Really saw him. A lonely man with sad eyes and dangerous strength who had saved her when he didn't have to. A man who didn't take, didn't touch, didn't claim her. She walked to him. "You saved me," she whispered. "You fed me. You didn't hurt me." "I don't want payment," he said, tension tightening his jaw. "Well, that's all I have to give," she said, voice shaking. "Let me pay my way." She unbuttoned the wool shirt, let it fall open. He froze. "June," he said. "Don't." She climbed onto his lap, straddling him, her breath warm against his cheek, her hands gripping his shoulders. "Try me anyway," she whispered. His hands rose, huge and trembling, and settled at her waist. For one heartbeat, she thought he would take her. Instead, he lifted her, gently, impossibly gently, and set her on her feet. "No," he said, voice breaking. "I'm too big in the places that hurt." Shame hit her like cold water. She turned away, face flushing hot. He sat in silence by the fire for hours. She lay awake, drowning in the belief that he had rejected her because she was ruined. The next morning, she found him building something outside, a second cot. At a wall between them, she felt something snap inside her. She grabbed the axe, walked to the new cot frame, and smashed it, splintering the wood with every swing. Wes stared at her, stunned. "I won't sleep like a stranger," she said, voice trembling with anger and longing. "Not anymore." She turned and walked back into the cabin. The wall between them was gone. That very night, when he passed her a cup and their fingers brushed, neither of them pulled away. The storm finally broke, leaving the world bright and cold, the sky washed clean. But peace did not return with the sunlight. Wes kept looking toward the ridge. He sensed danger the way animals sensed fire, before there was smoke. He was right. 2 days later, the sound of hooves echoed through the valley. June froze at the window. Wes stood behind her, jaw tightening. The 3 riders broke through the trees, and at the front, on a fine black horse, was the man who had destroyed her life. Rickard! June's breath left her in a single gasp. She stumbled back, shaking. Wes stepped forward, placing his body between her and the window. His voice was low and calm. "Go to the back room. Bar the door." "Wes, do it," he said. Not asking. Promising. She obeyed. He stepped outside. The riders stopped 20 yards from the porch. Snow hissed under their horses' hooves. Rickard's smile was thin and cruel. "I'm here for what's mine," he said. "Send Clara out." "There's no Clara here," Wes replied. "Only June, and she doesn't belong to you." Rickard laughed. "Everything belongs to me, even her fear." One of the bounty hunters swung down from his horse, cracking his whip. "Fetch her," Rickard ordered. The man stepped forward. He only made it 3 steps. Wes struck him once, one heavy, savage punch that dropped him cold into the snow. The second bounty hunter reached for his gun. June screamed from inside the cabin. Rickard swung his revolver toward her voice. That was his mistake. June burst out the back door, not with fear, but with fury. She carried the iron shovel filled with glowing fire from the hearth. With a cry that came from every wound life had given her, she flung burning embers into Rickard's face and onto his horse. The animal reared in agony. Throwing him into the snow, the revolver skidded away. The remaining bounty hunter saw the chaos, spurred his horse, and fled. But Wes wasn't looking at him. He moved toward Rickard with slow, terrifying purpose. Snow crunched under his boots, and his large fists closed like stone. Rickard scrambled backward, screaming as Wes grabbed the front of his coat and hauled him upright. Wes slammed him against the cabin wall. The logs shook. His left arm pinned Rickard's throat. His right fist drew back. He was seconds away from killing him. June ran to him, grabbed his arm. "Wes, please," she cried. "Don't lose yourself. Don't become him." Wes froze. His fist trembled. Then he released Rickard, letting the man collapse into the snow. Instead of killing him, Wes did something far worse. He dragged Rickard to the chopping block and forced him to write a confession. Every crime, every lie, every cruelty. When Rickard tried to resist, Wes slammed his hand onto the block and growled, "Write it, or I take the hand you used to hurt her." Rickard wrote. He signed. But Wes kept the confession and sent him into the mountains on foot. No horse, no gun, no dignity. A long walk through melting snow. He would live, but he would never return. When Rickard disappeared into the white distance, Wes did not return to the cabin. He walked to the woods, shoulders heavy, carrying a darkness he feared would swallow him whole. June watched from the doorway, heart breaking. She knew that look, the look of a man who thought he'd ruined everything he loved. She waited until she couldn't take the silence anymore. Then she walked after him. She found him sitting on a fallen tree, head in his hands. "You should go," he said, without looking up. "I'm not safe. I fought for you, June, and I almost killed for you. That part of me, it scares me more than any man alive." She sat beside him, knees in the snow. You think you're the darkness," she whispered, "but you're the only light I've ever known." He looked at her then, really looked, pain and disbelief in his eyes. She reached into her pocket and held out a small piece of birch bark, the carving she'd made, the W and the J. "I made this because I wanted a place to belong," she said. "You're that place." Wes's breath shook. He took the carving gently, as if it were fragile. "Don't leave me," he whispered. "I won't," June said. "Not if you say I'm yours." He cupped her face in both hands. His thumbs brushed her tears. "You're mine," he said, voice breaking. "Not as a thing, not as property, as the woman I will stand beside until the mountains crumble." She fell into his arms. He held her as if the whole world depended on it. And maybe it did. The aftermath. Spring returned. Snow melted. They rebuilt the goat shed, planted corn, mended tools. June's strength grew. Wes's silence softened. Their cabin, once a hiding place, became a home. But the world found them again. In town, people stared, some with judgment, some with hunger, some with pity. June felt her old shame return like smoke creeping under a door. Then, in front of everyone, Wes reached across and took her hand. Firm, protective. Sure. It silenced the street. Later, a preacher arrived at their cabin with a ledger. "Folks in these parts want you to claim this land," he said. "As a family." A family. The word lodged like a seed in both their hearts. The preacher opened the book. "What name should I write?" Wes looked at June. She nodded. "Wes," he said. "The family name is Wes." Then came the last question. "For a shared claim," the preacher said gently, "the law assumes a bond. Marriage." June's breath caught. Wes's hands clenched, but neither stepped back. They married beside the stream. The preacher spoke softly. Wes held her hand instead of a ring. "You are one," the preacher said. "What the world broke, let this bond mend." That night, in the cabin they built with their own hands, June whispered one word to him. "Husband." He pulled her close and kissed her like a promise. Years later, children's laughter echoed in the valley. The cabin had grown. The land was theirs. The shadows of the past faded like old scars. On the porch, Wes wrapped his arms around June's waist as they watched the sun sink behind the Wind River Mountains. They were no longer Clara and the giant who saved her. They were Wes and June Wes, two people broken by the world, healed by each other. Love did not come easy. It came through fire, fear, winter, and blood. But it came, and it stayed.